Hello Internet, welcome back to the Let's Mod Cataclysm series. In this episode we're going to be creating a mod file, a mod folder for our new mod. We're going to be setting up the modinfo.json. So we're going to talk about everything that goes into a modinfo.json for basic setup. And then we're going to be creating a tutorial world so that we can test our mod as we add things to it. Now the first thing I need you to do is locate your Cataclysm directory. We talked about this in a previous video. It's probably called CDDA, and if you don't know where it is and you use the launcher, you can find this line right here. So we're going to navigate to that directory. We're going to open things up, and we're going to go to Data. We're going to go to Mods, and this is the folder in the game that contains all the other subfolders, and each of these subfolders is a different mod. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a new folder. If you don't know how to create a new folder on Windows, you will right-click, you will go to New, and you will go to Folder. We're going to call this Tutorial. If you're on Linux or another operating system, I do apologize. I don't know how to do most of these things on other operating systems. You would have to Google how to create a new folder or a new file or whatever as we go along in this series. Now, what we need in this folder, it's empty, of course. What we need is a modinfo folder, modinfo file. We could create this from scratch, but we're not going to do most things from scratch. We're going to copy and paste. So what we're going to do, we're going to pick a random mod here. I'm going to go with the Dino mod. I would encourage you to do the same if you have access to the Dino mod, because I want these mod info files will look slightly different depending on what mod they are part of. And so I would recommend you copy the Dino mod. If you do not have the Dino mod in your mod file, in your mod folder directory, you could copy any other modinfo.json and that would be fine. It's just, if you copy from another mod folder, there's a chance that it will have other things in it, which mine won't have. So what we're going to do, we're going to copy a modinfo.json. We're going to go to our tutorial mod and we're going to paste it in. And then we're going to open that with our text editor. You'll see mine is a very simple file. It starts with an opening bracket and it closes with a closing bracket. And then we have one bracketed curly brace entry here. And this is the modinfo file. And that's all that it is. It's just, for this one, it's 7 lines. Very simple, very straightforward. And we're going to talk about some things that belong. If you copied a modinfo file that has additional lines in it, we'll talk about that a little later. But basically right now you're going to look for it should be the very first set of curly braces. It should start with type modinfo. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and locate that in your file. Now, what does type mean? Well, this is just telling the computer that, hey, this particular entry, what we're seeing, what you're reading in right now, is a modinfo type. It is of the type modinfo. We will never use this again because this is this particular type only. It only applies to the modinfo. If this were a creature, it would have a different type. If this were an item, it would have a different type. And it's this specific line. Like if we changed this to lowercase, this would not work anymore. So we want to make sure that that's exactly how it appears. And that's not going to change. You're going to leave that line alone. You'll see that line ends with a comma. Every line except for the last line in an entry will have a comma. So here we have comma, 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 all the way down to the final entry, which does not have a comma, or the final line, I should say. The next line we have is ident. You can think about, so every entry that I'm aware of has either an ID or an ident. You can think of them, they're basically interchangeable. Basically, this is the technical name that this entry goes by. So this particular modinfo entry, the technical name, the name the computer knows it by, is DynoMod. We're going to change that. I'm going to call this the tutorial mod. Now, IDs and idents are generally treated, I'm pretty sure they're always lowercase. And anytime you have a space, you need to make it an underscore. You can't just have a space, or I'm pretty sure it throws an error. So, put that underscore. Once again, this is just a technical name. Your player will probably never ever see this name. This is just for the computer. And this ident has to be unique. It can't match the ident of any other mod. So if we just left this as the dino mod and we loaded up our game, the game would throw an error because there's already a mod info entry that has the ident of dino mod. And you can't have two sharing the same ident. So we're going to call this the tutorial mod. Oh, I can't spell. Oh, good lord, that was quite bad. Tutorial mod. I frequently save with Control S. You'll probably not notice. It is important to save as you go. This little asterisk up here, I don't know if you can see that. When I hit Control S, it disappears, showing that this is now a saved file. Next line we have is the name. Now this, the player will see. So you can make this capital if you want. You can have spaces in this. This is just a string of text that will display in the game when the player is looking at this mod. So go ahead and give your mod a name. We're going to call ours the tutorial mod. You'll notice as well, all of these are entered in between double quotes. That is important. If you get rid of a double quote, it will no longer work. So make sure that you keep these in double quotes. And this is just the name. This is what will display during world creation. This will be displayed if your player checks what mods are running while they're playing the game, things like that. So it's important to make this name something that your player can quickly connect with your mod. You know, you wouldn't create a dinosaur mod and then call it like cows and chickens. Well, it doesn't make sense. The player needs to be able to quickly look at that and know from its name what it means. So give yourself an appropriate name. Next line we have is description. This is the line of text that will appear in the world creation menu. When your player hovers over your mod, it will give a brief description of what the mod contains. So we're going to say adds a little of everything. I capitalize and punctuate things like this because it's a description and it looks a lot easier to read than if we just typed like, you know, something all lowercase or what have you. Now next we have the category line. Now category line's a little different. If we launch our game and we go into the world creation menu, you'll see that every mod is laid out in a different category. So here we have the core content packs, we have the item edition mods, we scroll down, creature mods, misc additions, building mods, etc. And so when you create a new mod, it's usually you want to fit them into the already existing categories. So ours will be, for instance, miscellaneous additions. So the best way to do this is to look for a similar, so here's mutant NPCs. It exists in the miscellaneous additions. So we will go back to our mod file, our mod folder, and we will find mutant NPCs. Here we go. We'll open that mod info and you'll see its category is misc_additions. So we're going to copy that and paste that in between these double quotes. So now when we load up the game, our mod will appear in the miscellaneous additions section right alongside the mutant NPCs and all the other miscellaneous additions. That's the best way to do it. I'm pretty sure you can write anything you want. Don't quote me on this. You might break your game. It might not launch if you do this, but you could just make it whatever you wanted, and I'm pretty sure it would still show up in the mod list. In fact, we'll test that. We'll go into world creation and we'll look, no category. Okay, so it would just show up as in the no category section. So the best thing to do is to find a mod that kind of matches what you're doing and paste in its category into your own. Now I did see something else in this particular mod info file that we didn't see in ours, and that is the authors line. You'll see it's missing from the mod info file that we copied. If we wanted to, we could just copy this whole line from the very start to after the comma. Where does that go? So in this one, it's between name and description. Oops. So we'll go in between name and description and we'll paste that in. You want to make sure when you paste things in that they line up with everything else. It makes things a lot easier to read. And you'll see here in the authors line, we have a opening bracket and a closing bracket. But why is that? Everything else has just been double quotes. Well, we can get rid of these brackets if we're just using one person. If it's just one author, you can just slap your name in there, get rid of the brackets, no big deal. Or you could leave them in, it doesn't matter. When you see these square brackets, usually when you see things in square brackets, it means it's a list. The exception being the starting and closing of the file. So if we have on one line like this a set of brackets, that's because multiple things can go in here. So for instance, now instead of just one set of double quotes, now we have two sets of double quotes separated by a comma inside of these brackets. So when the computer reads this, they say, okay, so we're on the author's line, and it sees a bracket. It says, okay, we're going to get more than one. Okay, so normally it reads, okay, name, and it says, okay, the next thing I expect is a colon, and after the colon, I expect one set of double quotes, and inside of the double quotes is the name. That's what the computer expects. When it gets to authors, it says, okay, I need a colon. After the colon, I need either a bracket or a quote. And if I get a bracket, what that means is that I'm going to get more than one set of double quotes. So it's okay as long as they're separated with a comma and space, and as long as they're both between double quotes. This is just fine. If we save this and we load up the game, it will display two authors instead of just one. So if we go to our create world and we scroll down to our tutorial mod, you'll see it displays Spencer Michaels and TheMurderUnicorn. So this is what we call an array. You don't need to know that, but it's basically just a list of multiple things. We're only one person, so we're going to get rid of the square brackets, and we're just going to put in our name. And again, it has to be inside of these double quotes, and it has to have a comma at the end. So if we save that and we would load that up, now it would just display our name. Next, we have dependencies. Now, dependencies are very important for your mod. Basically, it's telling the computer, hey, when you load this mod that we've created, you also need to load this mod. Any mod that's on this list also needs to be added. And the reason that's important is because let's say, so right now we have the dependency of DDA. And what that means is that the core game, Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, needs to be loaded in order for our mod to work. Which is true because we're going to be using monsters and items and things like that from the core game. So we always want DDA. Anytime we're working with any item that exists in the game, any monster, any location, we have to have the DDA dependency. So I would encourage you to just never ever get rid of this line. Always have DDA. It's just so much easier. Now if you were working outside of that, you probably know a lot more about modding than I do, and you're probably not watching this tutorial series. So I would encourage you as a beginner to always have DDA in your list of dependencies. But we can also add other mods to this list. So let's say our mod, I really like the dino mod. Why don't we add, a dinosaur from the dino mod into our mod, and we're just going to tweak it a little bit, and we're going to change maybe what its loot is or whatever. Well, then all of a sudden we need to add the dino mod to this list, or else it won't work. Anytime you add something to this list, you need to use the ident of the mod. So we'll go back to our mods file. We'll go to the dino mod section, our dino mod folder, and we'll open that mod info file. And you'll see the ident is dino mod, so we will copy that. The case is important. What we wrote here would not work because this is not what the ident is. The ident is capital D, capital M dino mod. So the best way to do this is to just paste it in. And anytime you add a mod like this, you want to put a comma, a space, and then the next mod in a quote. And at the end, we don't have a comma. We only have a comma in between. So if we add, another dozen, you can add as many as you need to this list as long as they're separated by a comma and a space and they're in double quotes. We don't actually want anything. We're just going to be working with the core files in this game, so we just want the DDA. Or in this tutorial mod, we're just going to be working with core game files, so we just want the DDA. But anytime you use anything from a mod, no matter what it is, if you're pulling it from a mod file, you need to add that mod to your list of dependencies or else it will not work. So that's a very important line. It's also worth noting that anytime you don't have to worry about the player selecting, like let's say, so I add the dino mod. So we're using dinosaurs from the dino mod. What if the player doesn't use the dino mod? Well, if they use your mod, it will automatically add the Dino mod to your list of mods when you start your world. So right now we have the DDA dependency. If we were to erase all of these mods from our world and then select a tutorial mod, you'll see it automatically adds the Dark Days Ahead pack, because the game knows that it needs that in order to work, that our mod requires Dark Days Ahead. So you don't need to worry about that as long as you list it in your dependencies. Very important. The next line that we have is the obsolete line. This is also very important. Here you'll see why I like Notepad++. It color codes certain things so they're easier to see. For instance, false needs to be all lowercase or it doesn't work. Oops, that was control. So if I make this, okay, well, so if I make this a capital F, you'll see it's no longer color coded. That's because Notepad++ knows that this will not work. It has to be a lowercase f. Anyway, we have the obsolete line, and what the obsolete line means is whether or not your mod will show up in this list. So for instance, I happen to know that the animatronics mod is obsolete. So if we go to the animatronics mod and we open that mod info, you'll see it's listed as obsolete true. Well, what does that mean? Well, if we go back here and we look through our list of mods, it's not on this list because it's considered obsolete. So if you copied a mod info file that has obsolete true, you need to change that to obsolete false. This is basically just so that older mods that are no longer kept up with, people aren't updating them, people aren't working with them, they get listed as true. That way it doesn't, when these mods break, because that's what mods do. Over time, people stop working on them and they fall apart because things in the core game change and people don't update their mods. So this is an easy way of quickly just going in, changing one line and saying, okay, well, look, this mod is broken, so we'll just list it as true and it'll stop showing up in people's lists, and then, hopefully it doesn't break anyone's game. However, our mod is not obsolete. We're going to be working with it pretty much for a while, and we're going to be keeping up with things. So we're going to make sure that that is false. We want this to be false, or else it will not show up when we create our world. Now, is there anything else that can go in a mod info file? Yeah, kind of a lot of stuff. In fact, if you copied and pasted from another mod file, from another mod folder, you might have a lot more than that. So let's just go look at we'll go no Rivtech guns. We'll open that up. And you'll see this has the mod info file that we were just talking about, but it also has another very large entry here. Well, what is this? Well, this is a blacklist file. This is a different type of entry that we're not going to talk about today. However, if you copied a mod info file that has a long list like this, what you want the mod info entry, and that's all that you want. So you will see an open brace. You will see that it is of the type mod info, and you'll see that it closes with a brace. It should line up with the open one. What you want to do, you'll get rid of the comma, and then you can erase everything that comes after it, except for one square brace bracket that closes the entry. So it's perfectly fine if you copied and pasted. All you want is this one entry. From one brace to one brace, they should line up, and it should close with a square bracket. So if you had additional things, you can erase them. Just make sure that you get rid of this comma. So basically what we're looking at, you'll see we have the mod info entry, which is of the mod info type. It ends at this curly brace, and then we start a new entry with another curly brace, and this is a item blacklist entry. So you can erase everything from that brace to this next brace, because that's one entire entry. So that might sound a little confusing. I'm not sure how to word that exactly, but basically, I guess worst case scenario, just look at my screen right now and type all of this in. If you really are desperate to, you're struggling a lot, just make sure your mod info file looks like this one, and take careful note of where there are and are not commas. So all that confusion aside, we'll close this because we don't want to save and break someone else's mod. All that aside, now what do we want to do? Well, we're going to save. We're going to close the game because when you save changes, they don't immediately appear in game. You have to restart it. So we'll restart the game. And we'll go to world creation. And this is what I would encourage you to do. Anytime that you start a new mod, I would encourage you to go to the world creation screen and create a world specifically for testing that mod. So what we're going to do, we're going to find our mod, which we call the tutorial mod. And you'll see everything displays like we said it would. There's the list of, there's the author's name. It tells you what it depends on, what the dependencies are, which was the DDA pack. And then it gives the description, which says adds a little of everything. We're going to press enter, which will move this to our active mods. And you'll see it automatically added to the DDA pack. And that's all we're going to add because we're just going to work with core game files. So we're going to leave the world creation stuff as it is. And we're going to call this the tutorial mod world, and we're going to create the world. Now if we go to new game, we'll just pick a random character. You'll see the tutorial mod world is now in this list, and we'll create a character on that world. Again, just a random character. We don't really care about stats or anything. We can change them if we need to do stuff for testing. We can change where our location is. We can do everything from inside the game. Right now we just want to create a character. So we're going to wait for my sluggish computer to go through the little checklist. We don't care about our name or anything. We're just going to advance. And here we spawn in an area. I'm going to hit F1, which is my debug menu. Yours is probably not bound. We'll talk about that at some point. Maybe we already did. I'm not sure. And I'm going to kill everything around us just so I can be in relative safety. And we're going to step outside, and I'm going to save the world, which for me is escape and 9 for the quick save. And now anytime that we, in fact I can just fully save. So now anytime that we change something in the game, we can hit load, we can go to the tutorial mod, and boom, we're in the game in about 5 minutes when my computer loads. And we're in the game and we're ready for testing whatever new mod, new item, new monster, whatever we've thrown into the game, we're ready to go. Here we have our character. We're in a world that has our mod activated. We're good to go. And so I would encourage you anytime you create a mod to create a test world. Like if we go here to load, you'll see I have multiple test worlds currently loaded. And that's because I occasionally tinker with various little mods and testing and things. So I would encourage you to do that. I think that's going to do it for this episode. I do think we got bogged down a little bit in some of these, trying to explain how to remove an entry and whatnot. Again, I would just encourage you to copy what I have here. This is the most basic. This is the basic setup. Anytime you create a new mod, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to create a new folder with a name that's for your mod. You're going to copy and paste a mod info file, and you're going to set it up so that it's in the game. You're going to create a new world for testing, and you're going to save a character on that world for quick loading. And that is the foundation, the very basic level of setting up your mod. In the next couple episodes, we're going to talk about creating items and creating monsters, and we're eventually going to talk about map gen, and we're going to talk about the blacklist mods and things like that. But this is the basic setup that you're going to do every single time that you create a new mod. So for now, thanks for watching, and I'll be back with more Let's Mod Cataclysm in the future.